What's up, YouTube? Culturedog Sam Hatch back with another video, and as promised, we're going to do another Blu-ray Spotlight video. Jump right in. If you saw my last one where I talked about Tales from the Crypt presents Demon Knight, I promised that I would be checking out its nice little counterpart, Tales from the Crypt presents Bordello of Blood. And this film had a lot of high expectations from viewers like myself. Mostly because of the success of Demon Knight, how it just kind of fired on all thrusters and came out of left field. So this second follow-up feature had a lot of baggage that the first film didn't have. And as I mentioned in the last video, Tales from the Crypt was a very popular HBO series at the time, adapting the old EC comics, which were largely morality tales. But these features were spec scripts that were being produced. They weren't even official EC Comics adaptations, which allowed for 90-minute run times as opposed to short little comic pieces. But this was from a script from back in the day that Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis had written called Bordello of Blood. And I mentioned in the other video how at the end of Demon Knight, the Crypt Keeper, voiced by John Kassir as always, shows up at the end of the feature and says, stay tuned for our next film, Dead Easy. And then I was waiting for this film, Dead Easy, to show up, and then this came out. So the story behind this actually tells you a lot about that and how Dead Easy failed to happen, and they had a script kicking around, Zemeckis and Gale had, and they just said, go ahead, make it, adapt it, rewrite it, do what you got to do. And Gil Adler, who had done a lot of Tales from the Crypt and been running the show with A.L. Katz for a while, went ahead and reworked the script with Katz helping as well. And they did the best they could, but nobody's heart was really in it, and you could see that it kind of came across, and film fans weren't really that excited when this dropped. Another thing it had going against it was that it came out after From Dusk Till Dawn, and From Dusk Till Dawn really just was like this same kind of vibe. That was a strip club, of course, with vampires, but it was like this film turned on 11 because of the Quentin Tarantino factor. So when you see something like this, it's cute, it's quaint, it's got a lot of in-jokes and everything, but it doesn't really deliver that punch to the head. It was like watching American Beauty again after seeing Fight Club, and it was like everything, just the volume was turned down, and that was kind of like the effect this had. But Bordello of Blood is a fairly simple tale of a very religious woman, played by Erica Eleniak, fresh off of Baywatch. And apparently there's some history to her character. She was originally supposed to be a stripper, and then she apparently, according to her in one bit, said that she was a porn star before this anyways. But as we meet her in the film, she's a very uptight young woman, and her brother, portrayed by Corey Feldman, is a thrill seeker spaz, and as always has that bizarre facial hair that looks painted on. And he is always looking to go out with his idiotic friends and get into some trouble and maybe get some tail or something like that. And they go to a local bar, play some darts, run into a crazily over-the-top guy who alerts them. It's kind of like that scene in Hostel where Alex tells them about the fine quality pussy they can get. And it does kind of tread that similar territory about, the sex trade being turned on its ear, that the exploiters become the exploited and all that. But that kind of thematic element isn't really thought about that much in this film. And it starts off with a bit of a flashback with Phil Fondacaro in a cool role as a pseudo Indiana Jones type character who's in South America discovering the tomb of this storied vampiress, and there's some more tongue-in-cheek postmodernism in that scene as well. And then, that leads up to the modern day, or at least in mid-90s modern day scenery. And yes, Corey Feldman is out at the bar with his friends who they act like they're 16, so I don't know if they're old enough to be in a bar, but I guess they are. And they're told about the wild adventures that will await them at this mortuary, and of course they go there. Well, two of them go there and discover that the ladies of the night there are really ladies of the night, not to give anything away. Aubrey Morris of A Clockwork Orange has a really fun role as the caretaker of the mortuary and the main embalmer, and he shows the young men in for a good time, and shortly thereafter Corey Feldman's character goes missing. So this leads Erica and Eleniak to look for the police for help, and they do not help, and then that leads her into the gaze of Rafe Gutman, a private investigator played by, Dennis Miller, not the actor that one would think would be portraying a gumshoe in a film like this. And he definitely treats the film with disdain. I mean, he improvises most of his dialogue and pokes fun at everything that's surrounding him. And it does toe that line. It actually, if you like Dennis Miller, you might appreciate it. If you don't and you think he's a bit of a smug asshole, then that's not going to change your mind, because he is. And he's openly disdainful of the plot that he's walking around in. And the plot they're in after is pretty light. Erica Laniak's got another side story with Chris Sarandon, who's this Billy Graham-esque preacher in a giant glass cathedral, and he plays guitar and all this stuff. That stuff really wasn't mined as much as I thought it was going to be. But Chris Sarandon is great in here. It was kind of interesting seeing Chris Sarandon and Corey Feldman, who were both in iconic vampire movies in the 80s, playing almost reverse types to their characters from those films. So that was pretty fun. And Angie Everhart is the lead vampiress in the film, the baddie, and she ostensibly got the role through Joel Silver's connections, because he had been working on Assassins with her then boyfriend Sylvester Stallone, and he said, "Hey, you should put Angie in the movie." And then Joel Silver went ahead and did that, and much to the filmmaker's chagrin, apparently nobody making the film wanted her in the role, and nobody wanted Dennis Miller in his role either. And but she actually did a fine job. She's not very menacing, but she seems to be having a really good time of it. And she's not like overly, stilted or too amateurish, like some of the other supermodels have been in films, like Kathy Ireland per se. And the film, it does have some gore, but then again, the effects aren't as good as in Demon Knight, and there's some reasoning behind that, as we'll find out later. But there is the hoot sequence of the film is a holy water gun super super fight within the brothel, and with Chris Sarandon and Dennis Miller taking out all these evil whores, and that's a lot of fun. And again, it's just very lighthearted. It's very postmodern. It's very self-referential. That can kind of wear thin at times. And some of the jokes are very, very hokey. But then again, a lot of the Tales from the Crypt jokes are hokey too. There is a framing sequence with the Crypt Keeper, William Sadler returning as the mummy, having a dinner engagement with the Crypt Keeper. And that's just, fun enough. But again, it's not a killer app like Demon Knight was, but it isn't an entire waste of time either. The filmmakers, however, don't feel that way about it, and they're not really that excited to watch it, which is why it's so cool that there is a collector's edition of this out. But we'll get into the whole behind-the-scenes stuff in a bit. How's the video? The video is nice. Again, maybe not as awesome as Demon Knight looked. There were a few scenes that maybe felt a little digital, but still, it's just a very natural looking picture, very detailed. The opening bits in South America are just amazing between the different wardrobe pieces. Phil Fondacaro's got this hat with some intricate designs on him and his clothing, and then his guide has more of like a woolen kind of poncho, but that's even got all this amazing texture to it, and that stuff just jumps right off the screen at you. And there's a lot of stuff shot during day, which is part of the problem with the film. We'll talk more on that later. So there's a lot of very bright scenes that pop, and good quality image. The best I've ever seen this thing looking. So very impressed with that. The sound is also pretty decent. It's very aggressive, not as maybe notable as the Demon Knight soundtrack, which really just blew my socks off. But it's got another DTS HD Master 5.1 audio track that's got a lot of surround development, and Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And there's, of course, the kick of Sweets, the Ballroom Blitz during the vampiress execution scene that really just rips across the soundtrack. So definitely good sounding and looks great. So I definitely recommend picking it up if you're a fan of the film. But the extras are where this sucker really shines. This is one of the coolest home video releases I have, and one of the rare occasions where you get a glimpse into a negative filmmaking experience. And I've, seen maybe a few other things that have a similar scenario, like some of the negative talk about Alien 3 on some of the Alien quadrilogy and etc. home video releases. But this has a lot of cool extras. It's got a commentary track moderated by Rob Galuso with writer A.L. Katz, co-writer A.L. Katz. They couldn't get Gil Adler, the director of the film, to actually join in the commentary, nor could they get Chris Sarandon, who they say nothing but nice things about, so maybe he just wasn't available. And, of course, Dennis Miller is nowhere to be found. And there's a really fascinating commentary because not only does it talk about the film Bordello of Blood, but it also talks a lot about, mostly because A.L. Katz doesn't like this film, and he's all very excited to talk about other things related to the Tales from the Crypt. It actually talks about how he got involved with joining the HBO series and specific shows and just working with actors. And very frank stuff. I mean, if you thought there wasn't anything that crazy in the band like 007 commentary tracks from the old Criterion Laserdiscs, I mean, those things have nothing on this. There's a bit where A.L. Katz goes on record against a number of people and just actors in general. It even says about how English actors are far more versatile than American actors, and they can't play against the type or their own natural persona. Which leads into the documentary. It's amazing documentary, The Making of Bordello of Blood. They actually got Angie Everhart, they got Erika Eleniak, they got Corey Feldman, obviously, and A.L. Katz and Todd Masters. So a lot of people that you would thought would be like, oh, I want that off my resume, were actually okay with coming back and talking about it. But it just starts off with this amazing gauntlet thrown down. Like, this is how you not make a film. And you're like, whoa, this is going to be interesting. And it certainly is. I mean, it talks about how nobody liked one another on the set. Corey Feldman was a super outgoing guy and tried to befriend everybody. Dennis Miller said, yeah, I'm not an actor. I'm just here for the money. And Dennis Miller forced the studio to pay him $1 million to act in this film when he had no intention of actually acting. And it was just going to improv and kind of sleepwalk through the film. He even had the filmmakers shoot him out. Basically, they do all the scenes with him early in the day, and then all of the scenes from his point of view are all had to be shot without him because he was on HBO doing his TV show at that time. So he had nothing but disdain for the film. The filmmakers really didn't care about the product. It was just they wanted to make that film dead easy that we were talking about earlier, and everything just fell apart with that. And they had to put something out, and Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale had the script, and they're like, all right, go ahead, rewrite it, just do it. And then, so nobody's heart was in this film. I mean, there's a lot of, visual effects of hearts in this film, but there's no passion in the filmmaking process. So, yeah, it was Corey Feldman, again, tried to reach out to Erika Eleniak, and she refused to come out of her trailer. She forced the filmmakers to rewrite her character. So it was just a hot mess, and everybody was difficult, except for Angie Everhart, come to find out. And Chris Sarandon apparently was very nice, too. But they shot the film in Vancouver, despite Los Angeles, and it couldn't shoot at night that much because there was only about 3 hours of usable nighttime up there, and to do a vampire movie with that was pretty difficult. And they had to take money away from all the special effects to give Dennis Miller his outrageous fee. So, and that's just kind of like the tip of the iceberg. It really is a hot mess of a behind-the-scenes story, but it's cool. And if you like the film, it's not going to make you like it any less. And if you just enjoy hearing crazy stories of Hollywood going wrong, this is a prime example. And it's so cool that nobody's making any bones about it. Nobody's looking stealthily around or skulking about. Everyone's just bold and out there and look, this movie sucked, these people were jerks. Erika Eleniak even admits that she was a jerk and wishes that she had approached the job differently and gone out of her trailer and talked to people. So it's really fascinating how just open and just not shy everyone is when they were talking about the film. So there's a few other things on there. Again, another still gallery in the theatrical trailer. But it's a cool release for sure, for different reasons than Demon Knight. But I mean, again, it looks and sounds better than I've ever seen it. It'll smoke all previous video incarnations, and if you want just like a fun, lighthearted, super silly vampire romp, you might have a good time with it. Again, some of the postmodern bits were a little bit too much for me at times, but your results may vary. So yeah, definitely recommend getting the both of them, and it's so cool how you get such a completely different experience between the two. So yeah, and I'm still in the midst of my 31 horror films in the month of October challenge, so we'll be talking more about that. And I do have another Scream Factory release I'll be checking out soon, Army of Darkness, the new 3-disc Blu-ray. So I'm gonna watch that and report back to you shortly. Hopefully you guys had fun, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.